Hello and welcome to Unstoppable's first mindset video podcast. We're going to be having discussions with like-minded people on areas such as mental health, stress, and just general lifestyle issues. And it gives me great pleasure in announcing my first guest for this first video podcast, Gayle Joubert, which I have spoken publicly and mentioned as my number one therapist. Now, Gayle is a transpersonal therapist and she specializes in anxiety and self-esteem. Welcome, Gayle.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
You are so welcome.
Honored.
Good, I'm glad. Gayle, I'd like to start by firstly getting to know you a little bit better myself, because I've seen you a few times before in the past with the most amazing benefit, I have to say. I'd like to know a little bit about you and the journey that has led you into this kind of path, this calling, your current career.
I think I've always been interested in psychology. I think from the age of 14 I was heading down to the cafe, the local newsagent, to buy Psychology Today. And I suppose I always wanted to understand myself, I always wanted to understand people. Always wanted to understand why were we so different, why didn't we think the same, do the same. I think my main goal was understanding. And of course, like with any therapist or psychologist, your main aim is to understand yourself and how you communicate and just be happy, get into a better life.
Do you think then throughout this whole process you've found a great benefit to you personally as you've looked into the psychology of others? It's helped you understand the person.
Without a doubt, massively. I am not the same person that I was 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago, 30 or 50 years ago. I was, as a child, I was somebody who I felt rejected. I didn't like myself. I wasn't wanted. Well, I would have been wanted had I been a boy. I went off to boarding school. My father died pretty much in my arms. Well, not quite in my arms, but he collapsed in my arms. And there was just a lot of, a lot of space for me to feel bad about myself. So I did not like who I was. And I think that was probably my driving force, was I hated myself. I couldn't understand why anybody would like me. So learning to love myself was really most of my journey. But I also had this underlying driving force to understand spirituality, to understand who are we, what are we really, why are we here, what's really going on. And I never stop learning, Tom. Whenever you think you know things, you realize you know nothing. So I'm now comfortable with the fact that I don't know anything. I sort of started out in my 20s, I knew everything. I was, Miss Know-It-All. Always have been Miss Know-It-All. And I always joke and I say, well, I used to think I know everything, now I know I do. But actually now I know I don't.
Yeah, right.
I don't know anything.
That's absolutely fascinating. And do you think that having that outlook as a professional now helps you to continually, push yourself as well in the sense that you do feel that there's always more to learn, so you're always assessing every person that you come across as kind of like a fresh canvas, they're new, and maybe your approach could
always
evolve.
Something else, always. And you think, wow, I didn't know this, how come I didn't know this? And so one of the things that stops me from doing a lot more is always think, well, there's too much more to learn. So whenever I'm going to go and do another course or another workshop, first I've got to go and read another 5 books. And then, of course, so eventually sometimes I just have to say to myself, go with what you've got, go with what you know. And you're always learning. There's just always more. If I look back on what I taught six months ago, I didn't know what I know now 6 years ago, and so on and so forth.
What do you believe has been more insightful for you in terms of your own learning? Do you feel that the actual books and the you know, like the reading, the knowledge in that respect has been more insightful, or the real life situations that you've gone through and the real life situations that you've been presented to from so many different people that you've helped? Have you felt that there has been your biggest learning, or picking up the books has been your biggest learning?
I think they have to go together. You know, what an event in life, or a person, or something that's happening in my own life, leads me to research that. So you might start by asking other people, how do you see it? What's happening for you? And then that leads me to go, wait a minute, there's something going on here. Could that be the nervous system? Could it be nutrition? Could it be this or that or the other? And that will lead me down that area of research. And I just happen to learn best by reading. Other people are more visual or auditory. My favorite way of learning is reading. So I read, I write, and then I cross-reference and put it all together.
Well, I'd like to say that whatever you're doing, it absolutely works.
Thank you.
But yeah, because it is phenomenal what the knowledge that you have, and it's, I think for me, anyone can have knowledge. You know, obviously they say knowledge is power, but applied knowledge is obviously more powerful than just knowledge alone. And for me, you certainly apply that knowledge in a beautiful way, which, you know, for anyone listening to this, you know, that might have had therapy before, Gayle manages to put things across in the most palatable way. It's very digestible and it's very usable. Every time I've been to see you, I've managed to leave here and apply quite powerfully your knowledge to my life. So,
and you've done an amazing job of it.
Just trying, Gayle. You've
done an amazing job.
Well,
it's been incredible.
You've played a big part.
Thank you.
Okay, let's look at this transpersonal therapist title. For anyone that doesn't know exactly what that is, could you just explain? Because I'd like to know exactly what that means.
Transpersonal really, in a sense, is the only term I can use. I could say I'm a hypnotherapist or a counsellor or a coach or a psychotherapist, but then that puts you in a box. And they are tools that you use. So cognitive behavioral therapy, if you only use that, then what about nutrition? What about the fact that you could do a bit of hypnosis, which gets directly into the unconscious mind? Or what about EFT or EMDR? These are all ways of getting things, traumas and phobias out of the body. There are so many different techniques that you can use. So I see them as tools in my toolbox.
Yeah, good, okay.
Rather than I am a person who uses a hammer, or I am a person who uses a screwdriver, or it's like, you know, somebody's a builder. They use a lot of different tools. So all I can really say is I am a transpersonal therapist. I work with a whole person across many disciplines, body, mind, and spirit. Because the body is so important. You asked earlier about events in your life. And one of the things that I suffered from was depression. And also, my daughter used to have eczema. And it was through trying to really discover what was causing the eczema that I discovered food and preservatives and how they affect the body. And that led me into seeing a nutritionist, doing some work on nutrition. I discovered dairy was one of the worst things for me. Too much dairy, and literally my nervous system, or whatever how you want to say it, I went into a low place. Gave up dairy and it was gone. Also too much sugar. And people with anxiety or depression don't realize that what they're eating really affects their physical body. And the physical body affects what you're thinking. And of course what you're thinking affects the physical body. So they work together. And then from another perspective, we are spirit beings, we are consciousness, we are energy, we are more than just this body. So if I don't see who I really am from a spiritual perspective, I'm going to take this life way too seriously. And if I don't see that my physical body affects my brain, I'm just going to think I'm mental. If I don't see that my thinking affects my body and more thinking, and I get into that cycle, I don't know, maybe you're going to blame the rest of the world for your situation. Maybe you're never going to see it. Maybe you're just going to get stuck in anxiety or depression or whatever it is. Or maybe you learned something as a child. So I think everything has to fit together, and everybody's a different puzzle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You've touched on two things then that I actually want to now stress a little bit more on, because you mentioned in your own path, your own journey, there has been a big element of looking within, learning to love yourself, which I personally have felt the absolute power of that. That starting point of just looking at yourself. So in terms of looking at yourself, and whilst you're getting the help and the support and the guidance, but having that reinforcement. So if I'm coming to see you, then I'm listening to what you're saying, I'm getting guidance from you, but then whilst I'm on my own, I am starting to kind of look at myself, perhaps look at some of my habits like food. Would you say that is one of the key parts in recovery, is that it's not just your part to play, you would try to empower the person to take some responsibility?
I don't take any responsibility. Right, yeah. I really don't. I read something the other day that I think Plutarch or something said, and he said, it sounds a bit rude, but he said, I point the finger to show the way. Now you can stand there and suck on my finger, or you can turn around and go in that direction.
Absolutely.
It's not my responsibility.
Yeah.
I cannot make anybody do anything, even in hypnosis. If you're asking somebody to relax, or you're asking somebody to visualize something, or you're asking somebody to do anything, I can't make them relax. If I say relax your leg, I can't do it for you. So if you're not willing to do the work, even in the session, don't go to the session.
And how do you think that comes about, Gayle? Because for me, obviously, in my life disaster, it took a hell of a lot of negativity and eventually a serious breakdown for me to finally go, right, this is it, I've got to kind of turn my life around. And then over the course of a 3-4 year period, there was meetings with yourself and there was other things that went on. But it started with that sincere decision to say, I have to change.
100%. That desire that I see that there's something in me. So it's taking responsibility for your own change. And then I can help people to make a map. So I always start out with, okay, where are we, and how can we make this map? What does the puzzle look like? Where do all the pieces fit? What is the journey you need to go on to get to where you need to go? If there's a nutritional component, because I think their chemicals are out of balance or their hormones are out of balance, I'll know that by the questions that I ask them. And one of the fundamental questions that I think we all need to ask ourselves in that situation is, this event or thought that I'm having about something, did I think like this all the time? Is this my constant thought about it? Or am I sometimes okay with it? So I think about, say, something, I don't know, maybe there was something that happened, or somebody had a panic attack while they went to an interview, or whatever it might be. Now, maybe when they're feeling okay, in a happy state, in a relaxed, safe space, they think about that and they think, it wasn't anything. But when their body is in an anxious state, they go, oh, that's why I feel like this, because this thing happened. And then when their body is in a closed down or disengaged state, they may think, it's just worthless, it's hopeless, it's always going to happen again. I'm never going to get out of this. And then suddenly they're in a better state and it's not a problem anymore. So why is that? And that shows you that your physical state is affecting your thinking.
And the way you're seeing things, the way
you're seeing things, the way you perceive.
So the same information is coming in. The same information is coming in, as in you're seeing the same thing, but on Monday that one particular thing is dreadful. On Tuesday it's not so bad. On Wednesday you couldn't care less.
Exactly.
And on Thursday you're really worrying about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we all can relate to that. I can relate to that.
So your state, the state your body's in, will affect the story you make in your head.
Amazing.
And you'll notice very often you can recognize the state that you're in by your story. So if you're in an unsafe space emotionally, financially, or just, from your relationship or genuinely unsafe, or maybe your body's ill, in which case you're going to create more stress chemicals or stress hormones. What's going to happen in that state is your mind's going to look for a reason that feels like that. So it'll pick on anything. You'll always find a reason.
Yeah.
And your reason may be, I messed up yesterday. Your reason may be, everybody hates me. Your reason may be anything. You'll find a reason, the roof's caving in. The state of the economy. You'll find a reason.
I can think of loads of cases where I've just picked anything out of that one day and made a big drama about it.
And then when you're feeling good, suddenly, you know what, the economy's okay, we always get through, we'll be fine, and that person didn't ignore me yesterday, they were probably just in a bad mood. And so now you're in a good, safe space. You're looking for reasons to be in a good, safe space. So now you start saying, it's actually really safe here, it's really nice to be in this place, in this. Like you were talking about the UK earlier. I was like, okay, if I think in a good space, you might think, well, it's lovely to be here, it's safe, we've got freedom of speech, and standard of living is great. Or I could be going, oh, I miss the sunshine.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't do that.
Yeah.
If I do go, oh, I miss that, I miss that, I miss this, I miss, what's the point? But you can see that if somebody was in a miserable state, then everything's miserable. If they're in a happy state, everything tends to be happy.
Absolutely.
But we also go up and down during the day. You get up in the morning, everything's fine and you're okay, and then, oh my God, I'm late, and suddenly you're in a blur state, and then your mind's thinking about all sorts of things, and then you're okay again, you're on your way, and then somebody nearly bumps into you, and you're again. So you do change state normally during the day. That's just a normal thing. You're going to go up and down. So but if your state, if you are thinking a negative thought or an anxious thought or a worried thought, and you keep playing that thought over and over and over, you're staying in that anxious state. So of course that is going to develop into an anxious mood, and you're going to be in an anxious space for the day. So you're going to keep yourself in that mood or in that state. And if you stay in that state long enough, you get stuck there, and that becomes who you are. Then you just become an anxious person or a worried person or an angry person. So your thoughts can become a mood and become a state because they start wiring together. Your brain automatically goes down the same route, and you've got to actively change the way your brain is thinking.
And how are we, I'll speak as if I'm asking you this question, how would I intervene? I think a lot of people are so consumed by some of the things that you've mentioned, which actually dissolve. Once your state changes, they just dissolve. And was I really bothered about that? So we've got these people that are kind of now in the depth of anxiety and depression, you'd say. So these are the sort of people that potentially want to now reach out to the likes of yourself and start to kind of work towards the mapping of finding a new way. But So going forward, let's just say that I've obviously I acknowledge everything that you've just said, and now I'm moving forward. What are kind of the things that I need to do to try to help myself stop that kind of state joining with other states, and then this negative energy creating such a force within me that before you know it, I'm anxious again and I'm depressed again? Well, how would I intervene? What are the sort of things that I would be looking for?
Well, I think that's a really good question, but it's also kind of a tough question,
Right.
because it's going to be different for everybody.
Right, okay.
So for somebody, say, that's got a phobia or suffering from panic attacks, or they really genuinely cannot let go of a trauma, so they've got post-traumatic stress about something or other, or they've had abuse, or that's something you can't just say, well, that doesn't bother me anymore because I'm fine.
Yeah.
You know, they can, at best they can do with that sometimes is just put it in a box and be okay, but it's always sitting there. So for those things that are underneath, that are causing a lot of angst, pain, underneath things, it's important that we deal with those.
Yeah.
So for myself, I would always say get somebody to help you with that. And I might do some inner child healing, I might do some EFT or EMDR or hypnosis or whatever work I need to do to release that trauma, to release the underlying wiring that you've got that says, every time I think of that, or you're replaying it, you're reliving it. So maybe somebody had an abusive father, and then they're scared of men, because every time a man raises their voice, they go into that same shock traumatic state, for example. That's just an example.
Absolutely, yeah.
What you need to do is release that trauma so that they can now hear a man's voice raised and not react to it. But then for other people, where there isn't a lot of underlying stuff, they may have just got into a habit, they may have learned their anxiety from parents. A lot of us pick up anxiety from our parents. Parents are going, oh, what if something happens to you? What if this, what if that? And then you pick that up. It's like, that's real, because your parents are everything. They know everything. They are gods to you. And you know, it's like you get to be a parent and then you suddenly realize you don't know very much at all.
Absolutely.
Your kids think you should know everything.
No, you're so right. We're given this responsibility. It's the biggest responsibility, and we mostly make a bit of a mess of it. But you know, I think if the heart's in the right place, then obviously that's a good starting point. But on the whole, it's a tough job.
It is a tough job. And I mean,
Yeah.
I wanted to be the best mother in the world, so off I went, of course, and read every parenting book and every book on parenting. I had an educational toy company, learnt about educational and toys and how we grow and how we learn and all the educational theory. And I have changed so many things. I home educated my children, which was really, you know, just for me, that was the most rewarding thing I ever did, was being a mother.
Wow.
And I think my children have taught me more than anything. And they still teach me. Sometimes they'll say something to me and I go, where'd you learn that? And they'll say, oh, you taught it to me. And I go, I couldn't have, I didn't know that.
Wow, that's amazing.
And sometimes they feed back to me things that I've told them, but also they're learning different things. So sometimes they'll tell me a whole different way of looking at something and I go, yeah, I never looked at it that way. And we're so stuck in our ways. So for me, coming back to what you were saying about what people should do, open the mind. There isn't just one way of looking at things. I just hate the way in today's world there's so much prejudice. There's so much hatred being spread. You know, I probably shouldn't name certain politicians, but you know, politicians who stand there and go, oh, they're spreading hate. They're horrible. They're evil. What is he doing? You know?
Do you know, Gayle, on that point, I think that's an amazing point actually to touch on. You know, in this field of like self-care, when someone's trying to move forward from a negative state to a positive state, would you say it's so important to try and distance yourself a little bit from the media, from social media, things like that, just initially, or certainly be mindful of what is going into into the mind?
The word you've just said is mindful. It's about awareness.
Yes.
So whether you disengage or whether you engage, don't go down a tunneled funnel of perception that you can't see anybody else's point of view.
Absolutely.
If you can't see the other person's point of view, you are not seeing anything.
Absolutely.
Is my personal belief about that.
So an element of responsibility to yourself, to have an open mind. Don't take everything as gospel. Don't take one person's word as gospel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Open mind.
Yeah.
Open mind. You are not right.
Yes.
As soon as you think you are right, you are wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are never right.
Yeah.
You have a point of view.
Yes.
But there's no such thing as a right point of view. There's just no such thing. It's too nuanced. There's too many ins and outs. You know, the whole Brexit thing. We must leave, we must remain, and then you hear all their arguments about why. And when you listen to them, what do you notice when you listen to them? Nobody's listening to anybody else.
No.
Nobody's listening to the nuance. Nobody's listening to what do the other party, what is their real pain? What's really going on, and addressing that. They just think, oh, we need to do this thing and this thing's going to solve it. Well, how's it going to solve it?
That's a really interesting point of view. Going back also, where this subject began was you were talking about some issues like phobias. One of the things that I think is quite relevant or certainly an interest to me is the post-traumatic stress disorder. And I just want to talk to you about how many people come to you and present a problem that is current in this very moment, on that very day, or would you say that 99%, 90%, or 80% of the problems that people come to you with are a past event that could have happened months ago, years ago, and then potentially is then something that they fret about due to a perceived kind of future event being the same?
Yes, it could be. But for example, somebody might come to see me for a relationship issue.
Yeah, right.
So they're having trouble in their relationship, which is very current. But the troubles they're having in their relationship individually often refer to something in the past. And the way they're relating to each other, well, it could be a communication issue. It could be a personality issue. It could be trauma. It could be all sorts of different things that will affect that relationship. I say relationships are like a school where you learn to grow. And if you don't deal with it, then you'll deal with it probably in the next relationship. So when people are prepared to take responsibility for themselves, not for their partner, then things can start working.
Do you think that then a relationship, even the most turbulent of relationships, can be a great chance for some beautiful inner growth and change? Because that partner, whether they be right or wrong potentially for you, which is another matter, but whatever that partner may be, they are bringing out issues within yourself that once resolved would help you grow as a person. Do you believe that within a relationship?
And absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We are always resolving our own issues. The world is a mirror. And what you're seeing in other people is coming from you. Sorry, you're projecting it, from yourself. So every time you hate somebody else or you judge somebody else, what are you judging in yourself? And hence why I say, you look at people talking, you can use the news and the media and everything else to see this happening. What's your favorite politician and what he's saying, and say, well, what is he actually saying about himself? Is he doing the very thing he's saying that everybody else is doing? Or in your partner, if my partner's angry, is that because I'm angry? Is my partner judging? Is that because I'm judging? My partner doesn't respect me. Do you respect them? All of those things, you need to take responsibility for yourself in yourself. Now, I don't judge people. I just think everybody is just trying to be happy. Everybody just wants a happy, safe, peaceful life, right? Or maybe an exciting life. a bit of adventure. And I think one of the biggest problems is we want to choose this happy state and we want to stay there. And we don't want anything to affect our happy state. Well, that's unrealistic. So what we have to do is learn to cope with what comes at us. And what's going to come at you are people who disagree with you, people who don't like you, events. You're going to stub your toe, you're going to lose your money. Things are going to happen.
Absolutely.
And so you have to learn to cope with those things without blame, cope with those things in a way that gets you back into your chosen state as quickly as possible.
That's really good. And actually it reminds me of something. One of the most powerful things that I ever learned was from you, and it actually saved me, and it's been a mantra ever since. I came to see you after I completed one of my marathons when I broke my foot. And at the time of doing that, I thought I'd made it. This was in my head, I thought I'd made it. I've achieved some sort of mental strength that will never ever go anywhere. My life's gonna be amazing now. Nothing's ever gonna go wrong. And that's what I absolutely believed at that time. Foolishly, I soon learned the hard way that wasn't the case. And before you know it, I was struggling again with a few personal things and a few life things. And when I came to see you, I think it was in the first 10 minutes, and I said to you, I thought I was there, and you put me in my place by just saying, you are never there. The journey goes on, and I said to you, you probably don't remember because obviously one of many probably people you saw that day, I said, you know what, Gayle, that's all I came here for you today. I know in my heart that's all I needed to hear, and it was, because that's the only thing I remember from that session, because it's what I needed to hear. And for me, it's a reassurance. Okay, life's tough, it's always going to come, be ready for it. I think you touched on a really good point, which I agree with, is the nutrition side of things. I believe that it's not the one and only answer or one and only cure necessarily, but it can play a big part in resilience to life. And what you're saying there about the ever-changing states, I certainly noticed that my states were more consistently nice. It wasn't a case of being extremely excited or really low. It was just kind of in the middle, but that was what I wanted. I just wanted that consistency. Nutrition gave that. I mean, can I just ask you one more time for the sake of the listener, do you believe that that's a very important part in stress management, in depression management, anxiety management, in all of those fields?
I cannot stress it enough. So many people will come and they'll say to me, yeah, it's not nutrition, it's all in my head. And yet I've had 3 of my clients gone on to become nutritionists because of the difference it made in their lives.
Amazing.
From anxiety to go on to being nutritionists. That's how serious it was.
Yeah.
And I had one of my clients, she's absolutely lovely, she said to me, I wish I'd listened to you 5 years ago. And she kept dealing with OCD and anxiety and whatever, and then when she changed her diet and she started taking out the things that were stressing her body, which was causing the cortisol to rise, causing adrenaline, and her body was stressed with those foods. And then she thinks she's mental. She's suffering from OCD, she's suffering from anxiety. And
so
this
all
is not
of those
just her.
subsided.
Take all the sugar out, have a really clean, good diet. Oh my goodness, no anxiety, no OCD. Isn't that amazing? Why? Because the cortisol and the state of the body isn't up here. So you feel like you're drowning all the time. Now, if you're in a state of anxiety, your prefrontal cortex doesn't work. If you think about it like a dial, and you think, okay, on this end of the dial, I'm excited, I'm really happy, and here I'm okay. And then here I start getting a little bit nervous. I call that sort of the orange zone, a little bit cautious, a little bit nervous. And you go into here where you're now in the red zone. You're anxious. And then you go a little bit further and you go into the, I'm disengaged. I'm out of here. I'm not really interested. I don't even want to talk to anybody. And then you might go into a really frozen or really depressed state. So if you imagine that you could turn this dial one way or the other, or you could get stuck in one of those states. Now, your ventral vagus nerve or your autonomic nervous system activates that state. So your thinking can change your state, your food can change your state, or an event or something that can happen. And your state comes first. So people think the story comes first, but think about it like this. If I am having an accident or something comes at me, I don't think about it first, I react first. And then the thought comes. The adrenaline arrives in seconds, the cortisol takes a few minutes. And so have you ever had a near accident where you react like that? You haven't even got a chance to think. By the time you're thinking, you're already back into the action state. So if you think of this part here of the dial as immobile, immobilized, and then this active mobile state as I'm overactive, and this state is just nicely regulated. So if you think of this state as the part of your autonomic nervous system regulates your heartbeat, regulates your breathing, regulates your temperature. If this state never goes on, you're constantly in this unregulated state where your heartbeat's going up, your temperature's going up, you're hyperventilating, or you're shutting down and disengaging. You know what I mean? Mm. So you may be in this very hyper emotional state, which could be anger, could be crying, could be emotional, could be whatever. You're in this red zone, or you're in the what I call the grey zone, where you're just disengaged, can't be bothered, there isn't any point. But what affects those zones? As I said, thinking, events, and food. So what happens when your body's in this zone because it's stressed? Your thoughts are going to go, there must be something wrong. There must be something wrong.
Course,
but you may not go, well, it's my body that's stressed. So if your fight or flight way of being is fight, you're going to be in a state of irritation and anger. If it's flight, you're going to be in a state of, oh my God, there's something happening to me, something's chasing me, there's a monster, everything's going to go wrong, I'm going to lose all my money, you're going to catastrophize. And if you're in that state, you're going to be, oh, I can't be bothered, I'm just switched off, it's all too much, and you're going to turn your emotions off. So where do you want to be? You know, you want to be in this nice green state. And I've got another state which I call the sort of enlightened state at the bottom, right, which is more of a viewing everything from an outside perspective state. So that would be the state where you're in your observer mind, mm-hmm, and you're simply mindfully stepping back and watching what's happening. Mm. So you're watching your thoughts. You're going, oh, I can see where I'm thinking. And you're watching your state and you're going, oh, I can see how my state is affecting my thinking.
Which again, I suppose, all of that, what you're saying there, I mean, mindfulness and being in that observing state, which is very, very powerful, and a great, great skill to learn from people that are not aware of that they have that ability. Just to become aware that they have it is a great starting point. But I mean, just to do that, also the cleaner your body, the more able you will be to apply any of your methods, even whether it be the CBT. Yeah, brilliant.
So think of it, your ventral vagal system or your autonomic nervous system is like nerves going from your brain stem. They go into your face, they go all over, they also go down your spine into your digestive system, your heart. That is your central nervous system. It's exactly what it says, right? That controls your digestion, your breathing, your heart rate. But one of those systems is the vagal brake. Now that's part of your regulating system. And that brakes, keeps your heart, your temperature and everything nice and stable, right? If you're in your anxious state, that sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system basically switches off. So what you've got now is you've got this runaway heart, because the brake's not there, runaway temperature, runaway breathing. And so what you need to do, and this is the first thing you would do in that state, is tell your body it's safe, because it's not feeling safe. So the very first thing you have to do is stop, I'm safe, there's nothing going on, okay? Roof's not caving in, and breathe. Nice slow breath, slow out breath. Now, the more you force your body, what you're doing is you're forcing on the regulator. People think, breathing, what is that? It's literally changing the state of your body. It's telling your body it's safe. Because if you weren't safe, you couldn't do that. So it's not going to, it will then eventually turn on that brake, which will lower your heartbeat, will lower your temperature. So what you want to do is get yourself into a place where you feel safe and you can calm yourself down. Don't think about your story. Don't think about what's bugging you. Change your state. But now if you want to stay in a nice state, eat well and eat clean. Because obviously if your body's stressed because it's trying to digest things it's not meant to digest, or your digestive system is affecting the nervous system in a way that's creating chemistry, stress chemistry, it's going to be hard to stay in that state. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely does make sense. And for anyone listening, I think what Gayle's just explained is such very, very simple but very powerful knowledge, and it all starts with self-love and self-care, really, doesn't it? I mean,
self-awareness and responsibility.
Yes.
When you're self-aware and you start taking responsibility and you stop blaming everybody else for your issues, then you can look inside yourself. Then you can do healing. You can change your thinking. You can change your perception. You can change your beliefs. You will always act according to your beliefs. So if you believe you're right, you're never going to see anybody else's point of view. You're never going to live peacefully. You're going to have crappy relationships. Am I allowed to say that?
Absolutely.
You're just going to have a life full of crappy stuff because you're only seeing from your perspective. You can't do that. So when you start to go, wait a minute, I like my perspective, but other people are entitled to theirs. You can start being aware of how you judge. You can start being aware of how you see yourself. I laughed at somebody yesterday. I was talking about the dial. And he said, oh no, that's shut off state. I never go into that state. He said, I don't really go there. Oh, really? And I had done some work with them as a couple. So I said, so when your wife says that you're not communicating, not in that state? When you go off and you're just disengaged and you don't want to communicate with anybody? Oh, he says. So he started writing on his thing where he's in that state, and he said, oh my God, this list is longer on this state than in
that was
any other
self-aware.
state.
That was a big bit of self-awareness for him then.
Yes. He suddenly realized he spent, and you know why? Because when he was a child, he was taught that being emotional was wrong. It was, you don't want to be one of those flighty emotional people. So he kind of skipped straight through the emotional part, avoided conflict, avoided emotion, and went into shutdown.
Amazing.
And he always saw that was better than that.
Because that's what he was taught.
That's what he was taught. Now, it doesn't mean it's better or worse. Obviously, you'd rather be in your regulated side. But it's certainly more shut down, and it's not going to help because you're disengaged.
Gayle, I could literally talk to you for the next 5 hours because I'm actually learning so much right now, and it's amazing. I just want to summarise. Now, I think one of the daunting things out there for anyone now that's struggling, that's kind of in quite a heavily depressed state and an anxious state, is they probably can see all of these issues, a whole kind of stream of it, and like what you're saying there, a lot of past issues which have formed firm beliefs. For anyone out there that's listening to this that is at a stage where there's kind of a knowing inside of them, they feel that they want to change, what should be the one thing that they should do today to start that process?
That's a tough question.
Yeah,
that's a really tough question.
It is.
People have got a real thing about going for help. But I would say go for help.
Yeah.
Why? You'll take your car to a mechanic.
Yeah.
Why not go to somebody who understands the personality, the system, the thinking, the brain, the moods, the traumas? Why not go to somebody who can help you to figure it out? they're just somebody to point the way. They're just somebody to make a map for you. They don't have to go digging into all your past. They don't have to open up all the traumas unless you want to. People think that they have to, I'm going to go digging through all that emotional stuff. No, I don't want to do that. They don't actually have to, but they do have to be self-aware.
Absolutely.
And so it helps to just speak to somebody who can make you look in the mirror, who can make you see what you're not seeing, because we don't know what we don't know.
That's so powerful. All of your information, Gayle, is going to be included in this podcast. So if you are in the Bagshot, Farnborough area, or like me, are willing to travel for the greatest therapist.
I work on the internet too.
Okay, so we're going to provide all of those details for anyone that's listening now. I highly, highly recommend Gayle as a source of help. For anyone that's wanting to go down their own route, Gayle has said one of the key things today, which I absolutely believe in, and it's looking within, but also Gayle has a full understanding of not just one aspect of this process. It is the nutrition, it is the mind, and it is the spirit, and all of those things are key in recovery, and Gayle fully understands that. So whoever you're going to, whatever resource that you're going to use, then it should be based along those lines.
I would say go to somebody who works across the board.
Yeah, definitely.
Preferably. But on the other hand, there are some amazing therapists. We've got some amazing therapists that work here in our centre that may only use one or two tools, but they understand across the board. And you can always, there's no harm in saying going to a nutritionist and somebody who deals with the mind and somebody who deals with the spirit, and then you put them together. You don't have to go to somebody who deals with all three. But I would say the closer you can get to somebody who's more transpersonal, the more likely you are for that person to be able to see an integral map. That's why we Integral Life Centre, because it's integrated. It's an integral approach.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for today, Gayle. It's been
Thank
amazing.
you. It's been awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.